After the events of last week and ending on a high, I wanted to continue moving forward and gain as much score as I could. So my goals for this week was to look at all of the dungeons I need score for and bring all of them up to a decent level. What level, you ask? Well, that could be rather tricky. You see, playing a non-meta spec and trying to get into keys, well, I don't really need to go into it really, you've seen the struggle so far. And of course running my own key, well, I can never guarantee that I've actually got the key that I need to do. So this could take a while. We start today with an item level of 505 and our total score is 1680. This week there isn't any dungeon or time walking weeklies, and because I've not actually got any gear crafted yet, I think we'll take the week off and jump straight into the content. For the record, I do actually plan on getting my embellishments. I just keep forgetting. We'll get them next week. Now, before we open the vault, I did just want to do one thing, and that was to jump into LFR and see if I can get my hands on the Chromatic Essence Trinket, which I'm pretty sure is going to be my next purchase using the Bronze Bullion. The trinket did actually drop, but of course I didn't win it. Alright, time for the vault, and this one is the most exciting vault so far, because not only did we clear a full heroic raid, but we finished and timed a +8. This means we have access to a myth slot. From the vault we have the options of hero tier hands, hero feet, hero wrists, a hero chest, and last but not least, a myth cloak with haste and verse. Not quite as exciting as I hoped, but it's myth. Now, there was an argument for a couple of the pieces, but could I really say no to myth? It was a little unfortunate being haste and verse, but luckily for me, I discovered that I could use the catalyst and turn that into mastery and crit. So that's what I decided to do. We chose the myth cloak from the vault, made sure it was enchanted, converted it to gain mastery, and then I went and upgraded my Thorncaller weapon to 528, which is the max level. I upgraded both trinkets to 512, and I upgraded the Seal of Filial Duty to 515. This took our total item level to 508. It was then time to jump into some Mythic Plus, and this week's affixes are Tyrannical, Volcanic, and Sanguine. The key we picked up from the vault was a Knockod +8. A key I did actually need score for, but I really didn't feel like running my own key. Not yet, anyway. So I started applying to a bunch of keys, and looking at my score, there are 4 places on Tyrannical that I've not been to yet, and those are Knockod Offensive, Uldaman, Ruby Life Pools, and Brackenhide Hollow. The rest of the keys that I have done on Tyrannical are only a +3 and a +4. So if my day goes well, maybe I could even look at upgrading these ones after. So as I'm sat here applying for keys, I tried pushing my luck a little bit. The key level I know I'm capable of doing is a +8. I know I don't quite have the damage at times, but as we've discussed in previous episodes, I honestly don't feel like that much damage is necessary for the key level that I'm doing. As long as the group can survive and the tank pulls appropriately, I'm more than capable of holding my own. But maybe applying for these 10s is a little too far. I mean, you miss every shot that you don't take, right? So I was basically looking for anything between an 8 and a 10, specifically those that don't have a bloodlust, and well, you never know. I sat here for over an hour and finally got invited to a +8 Algotha Academy. And this one, well, this one was certainly worth the wait, because I don't know if you eagle-eyed viewers have already noticed, but the leader of this group is a survival hunter. And as most of you probably know, survival is one of 3 specs that I'm playing this season. So this group, in terms of stats, has the worst 2 DPS specs in the game as it stands. This run doesn't start off too well, as we lose the hunter and the healer to the trash before the first boss. We begin the first boss and, well, you see how I'm below the healer on damage? Yeah, my mouse stopped working. And no, it didn't run out of battery. Every now and then there's like a communication between the mouse and the game where the buttons either don't work or it's like I'm holding control or shift. And the only way I know how to fix this is to simply reload. Well, that's a good start. I get back just in time for the second lot of ads. Not everyone is stacked and moving together, and myself and the healer get knocked away. The boss's burst forth ability takes both of the druids out. The healer gets picked back up and we continue the fight. This encounter took way longer than it should have. Sadly, the hunter dies at 3%, but we're able to push on and take this guy down. As we make our way to the second boss, there's 2 things that are different about today's episode. As you may have noticed so far, my plater profile is a little different. Instead of the normal colours that displays caster mobs, those that have frontals, and so on, this one highlights the mobs in orange when I have Flame Shock applied. They'll then turn green if they have both Flame Shock and Lava Lash. This is to apply the Lash in Flames debuff, which increases the damage of Flame Shock to that target by 100% for 20 seconds. And what this means for my AoE rotation, I basically want to have Flame Shock on at least 6 targets, and Lava Lash as often as I can. As you can imagine at times, especially on a tyrannical week where mobs die very quickly, this is rather difficult to do. Not to mention my ADHD and learning a pretty overwhelming spec. It's a lot to keep track of, and I tunnel quite often. So tabbing between targets and making sure everything is active, yeah, well you'll see, I don't do a very good job of this. This plater mod was shared to me by a couple of community members when I was live on stream, so a big thank you to those who recommended it. I apologize, I can't remember their names off the top of my head, but you guys know who you are. And if anyone else has any more tips for me, well, you can drop them in the comments below, or you can come back and chat to me when I'm live over on Twitch. You'll be seeing a lot more of the Shaman when this challenge is finished, as I'll be streaming a lot of it and continuing my journey to 3k. But don't forget, I'm also taking the Feral Druid and Survival Hunter to 3k. Along with this, I am also actively playing my Rep Paladin once again because I just can't stay away from it. Oh, and I've also started prepping the Outlaw Rogue and the Fury Warrior, so they're coming soon. But that's a secret, so don't tell anyone. Eventually, I will be uploading some footage of all of the specs I'm playing, smashing through some keys, giving my thoughts and opinions, and trying to determine my new main for the War Within. So if that's something you guys are interested in and you're enjoying the journey so far, why not show your appreciation by leaving this video a like. The second boss goes down absolutely fine, and you know what? I'm actually quite happy with my single target damage. And although I'm lacking in terms of AoE, I'm starting to understand why. As previously mentioned with how the rotation works, there's quite a lot of setup involved, and if you don't get that right, or the mobs die too fast, chances are you're not going to do much damage. So although there's a lot I can do to improve, and I'm not particularly playing very well when it comes to AoE, I feel pretty confident knowing what I need to do to improve. And all of my struggles today, well, I think you're going to see them throughout the rest of the video. Sorry, spoiler alert. The third boss goes down absolutely fine, and we move on. And honestly, there's not much to cover for the last boss at all. We lack a little damage at the beginning, we pick it back up, and we end up taking this guy down 2 chests the run, taking our total rating to 1,805. Along with this, we also loot a hero belt from the chest with Verse and Mastery. From here, we get into an Uldaman +8, which took me nearly 2 hours to get into. So you're probably wondering, Dilly, was this worth the wait? Now, being a tyrannical, you probably want to start with Bromac and use Bloodlust. That way, you can get it on cooldown. After that, you backtrack and you take down the dwarves. This group didn't do that, and I honestly thought Bloodlust on the dwarves would be a massive waste, so I didn't use it. When it comes to the dwarves and playing melee, along with all of the stuff on the ground that can prove very tricky from time to time, there's one ability from this encounter that I keep dying to, and that is the Wild Cleave from Baylog. Yeah, I did this live on stream, I just blame Seth.
That was the tank's fault.
Exactly, Bastion, you tell him. We end up losing the healer and one of the hunters, but thankfully we take these guys down. We then move on to Bromac, and you know what? For the most part, this actually goes really well, until we get to the last 8%. There's a butt ton of damage going out, the healer struggles to deal with it, they end up dying, and once again on this boss, Dilly goes into panic mode. Quick, heal and surge, off heal, off heal. Yeah, I tried. I wasn't very effective. Alright, boss number 3, and if I can't survive the bleed on a fortified week, how on earth am I going to deal with it on a tyrannical week? This one doesn't start well when we lose one of the hunters early on. The tank makes a very smart call and decides to reset the boss. We try this guy again, and you know what? This one actually goes really well. And to top things off, I actually survived the bleed. We start making our way to the 4th boss, and things start falling apart. To kick things off, the tank dies, so naturally everyone else does too. We make our way back, and I think the healer was a little confused.
Run away, nerd.
15 deaths later, we found ourselves at boss number 4, and dodging the fire proves very tricky. The healer goes down, there's no one to res, and this causes a wipe. We get back to the boss, and as we're standing there waiting for the tank to pull, I don't notice that in party chat, one of the hunters needs to repair, as it seems their weapon is completely broken. The tank finds this completely unacceptable, the boss aggroes onto one of the hunters, I jump in like a madman and pop all my cooldowns, and the tank's having none of it. So, does that answer your question? Was that worth the 2-hour wait? For you guys maybe, I'm the one suffering. Ay. Usually I record all my gameplay on a Wednesday. So far this season for the Enhancement Shaman, I've had to record on both Wednesday and Thursday. That doesn't include writing the script, doing the voiceover, and then all the time it takes to edit the video. I basically start this entire process on a Wednesday and finish it all the following Tuesday. Give me a break, man, I just want to time these keys. After that, I decide to list my own key, that being a knockout offensive +8. And whilst I form this group, I thought I'd give you guys a little update on the Feral Druid and the Survival Hunter. I've kind of slowed down on them so far, and they're both approaching KSH, which is 2500 rating. Both specs not in a very good spot, and I'm still struggling with their damage output. So I have decided to slow down a little bit with those two, and to start playing my Rep Paladin a little bit more, at least for now. I've got the entire season to get to 3k, so it's nothing I need to rush. And as mentioned earlier, I may have prepped another couple of specs that I want to try out, so maybe you start seeing those on stream pretty soon. Or maybe you're watching this 2 months later and I've already done it. Either way, I thought I'd just give you guys a little update on what's going on. Alright, so knockout offensive +8. And if you remember during the Algva Academy run, I mentioned there were two things that were different about this episode, but we only spoke about the Plater mod. The other thing that's different about today's episode is the fact that I only just noticed that the ability tracker wasn't working. Go on then, let me have it. Call me a buttface in the comments. The group I put together for this key was actually really good, and the warrior was pumping. And as we spoke about earlier with my AoE, it was that bad that the blood decay was absolutely destroying me. I was really struggling to spread my lava lashes, and the tank didn't make it any easier with some of the kiting. But maybe this is something I just need to work on and play around. But trash packs were being kited all over the place, it was super overwhelming. I got completely flustered, I wasn't applying flame shock. When I could, I struggled to spread it to other mobs, and it was just a complete mess. I didn't have a great time. But what do you guys think? Is this just something I have to get better at? Could the tank have done a better job at gathering all the mobs? Or is this just one of these awkward situations that I'm going to find myself in from time to time? I don't know, man. I'm really enjoying the spec, but it's a lot of hassle. Not much to cover for the rest of the run. It gets a little sloppy at times on the last boss, but we do actually time this key, taking our total rating to 1892. I decided to continue running my own key, and after the knockout, we were presented with a Ruby Life Pools +9, which I decided to keep at that level. I get incredibly lucky when a Rep Paladin and a Fury Warrior sign to the key, to which the Rep Paladin asks if I want to give them lead, as they have higher score. When it comes to the higher keys, you might find yourself in the same situation. By passing the lead over to the Paladin that has 2900 score, this is usually an indicator to anyone signing for the key that the group has experienced players with decent gear, and in return, you're more likely to get players around the same level. So if anyone else ever finds yourself in the situation I'm in right now, there's no harm in asking the higher rated player to take lead and form the group. I don't typically like doing this myself as it feels a bit cheeky, but as you'll see in this key, it works wonders, as these guys pump out a ridiculous amount of damage. The first boss starts really well, and I'm actually managing to keep up with the Fury Warrior and the Rep Paladin, but as soon as the ads are spawned, yeah, that's a different story altogether. I'm not keeping up with these guys, and as you would imagine, this run was incredibly smooth. We ended up 2 chests in this run, which now gives us a +11. This took our total rating to 1976, and not a single person died. Man, I wish I could keep these guys. I then decide it's time to return to Uldaman, as I really needed score for this week, and this one started off great. The tank asks for a pull timer, and the key immediately starts. Hilarious. This is another one I really struggled in because everything just died super fast, which after the previous Uldaman run, yeah, I'm not going to complain about damage in this one. If the BM Hunter and the Fury Warrior are going to pump a butt ton of damage, well, I'm just along for the ride. Once again, we reach the 4th boss. And just a little tip for this fight, by the way, these guys on the edge of the room, yeah, don't stand by them. This is where the fire comes from. We did end up wiping to this boss, but we returned for round 2 and it went so much better. We got to the last boss with 9 minutes remaining, but it only took me a couple of attempts this time. See, I can do it. Positioning, just like last week, was a pain to deal with, and there were a couple of times I simply couldn't attack the boss. Nevertheless, we did end up timing this key, taking our total score to 2066. We also picked up a hero ring with high crit and haste. The last key I needed score for was a Brackenhide Hollow. I tried getting into an 8, it took far too long, and it was getting rather late. So on this occasion, I settled for a 6. And after doing so many 8s on this guy, this 6 actually felt like quite the step down. It also helped that both Ra and Leroy Jenkins did so much damage. Though to be fair, they were both like 520. I guess they're just farming crests. The first death came at the first boss. Obviously, it was me. Yeah, I don't know, maybe I got cocky because it was a 6 and everything else had gone so well up to this point. Sprocket would be proud. Apart from that, there's not really much to cover from this run, apart from the totem placement on the last boss. Everything up to this point had been tanked really well, but the placement here could use some work. I could barely attack any of them. Luckily, it didn't really matter so much, as we end up timing this run 2 chests in the key, taking our total score to 2,144. Not a bad way to end the week.